Making headlines this hour, the President's office confirms that President Dr. Muiz departed the Maldives on the morning of 31st July for an unofficial visit to Singapore. Sri Lankan President Anurakumara Dissanayake concludes his official state visit to the Maldives. President Dr. Mohamed Muiz expresses confidence that the long-standing friendship and cooperation between the Maldives and Sri Lanka have entered a new phase of a deeper understanding and reciprocity. And Maldives issues a forceful appeal for intensified international cooperation to end what is characterized as deliberate acts of genocide and worsening humanitarian conditions in Gaza. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to PSM News in English with me, Hafiza Abdusattar. Now the news in detail. The President's office confirms President Dr. Mohamed Muiz departs the Maldives on the morning of 31st July for an unofficial visit to Singapore. The visit comes just weeks after a state-level engagement with Singapore, during which President Muiz and First Lady Sajida Mohammed travelled to the city-state at the invitation of President Tharman Shanmugaratnam. During that earlier visit, President Muiz met with President Shanmugaratnam and Prime Minister Lawrence Wong. The leaders held discussions aimed at strengthening diplomatic and economic relations between the Maldives and Singapore. Both sides underscored their shared interest in advancing regional cooperation and sustainable development. As part of the state visit, the two countries signed several memoranda of understanding, formalizing initiatives intended to expand collaboration across a range of sectors. Sri Lankan President Anurakumara Dissanayake concludes his official visit to the Maldives. The visit took place at the invitation of the President Dr. Mohamed Muiz from 28th to 30th July 2025. On his arrival in Male, President Dissanayake was accorded a ceremonial welcome. During the visit, he engaged in official talks with President Dr. Mohamed Muiz and witnessed the signing of a key memorandum of understanding and a treaty, both aimed at enhancing bilateral cooperation. The two leaders also delivered joint press statements reaffirming their shared commitment to strengthening ties between the Maldives and Sri Lanka. A state banquet was hosted in honor of the visiting president, and several cabinet ministers and senior officials paid courtesy calls during the visit. Furthermore, symbolic tree planting ceremony was held at Sultan Park in Male on 30th July as part of his visit. During the ceremony, President Dissanayake planted a Tanjong tree, Munima, under the Maldives' 5 million trees planting program. The gesture served as a symbol of goodwill between the two countries and reaffirmed their shared commitment to environmental sustainability. This visit marked President Dissanayke's first state visit to the Maldives since assuming office in September 2024. While the Maldives and Sri Lanka established diplomatic relations in 1965, this visit coincides with the 60th anniversary of diplomatic ties between the two nations. President Dr. Mohamed Muiz expresses confidence that the long-standing friendship and cooperation between the Maldives and Sri Lanka have entered a new phase of a deeper understanding and reciprocity. In a social media post following the visit, President Muiz reaffirmed that both governments' commitment to ensuring the swift implementation of agreed outcomes and to maintaining regular dialogue at all levels. The Sri Lankan President's visit also featured a state banquet held in his honor and courtesy calls by several cabinet ministers and senior officials. The visit marks President Dissanayke's first state visit to the Maldives since assuming office in September 2024. While the Maldives and Sri Lanka established diplomatic relations in 1965, this visit coincides with the 60th anniversary of diplomatic ties between the two nations. Maldives issues a forceful appeal for intensified international cooperation to end what it characterized as deliberate acts of genocide and worsening humanitarian conditions in Gaza. The statement was issued at a high-level United Nations conference convened to advance the two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Representing the government, Dr. Ali Nasir Muhammad, a permanent representative of the Maldives to the United Nations, delivered the national statement with a call for renewed commitment to diplomacy and multilateral engagement. He underscored the urgent need for the international community to take decisive action to end the humanitarian crisis in Gaza and to support the realization of Palestinian statehood based on pre-1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. His remarks also highlighted the critical role of humanitarian assistance. Ali Nasir stressed the need to maintain the operations of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian refugees in the Near East, UNRWA, describing its aid as essential to millions of displaced Palestinians. The Maldives added backs the Arab Reconstruction Plan, designed to support recovery and stability across the region. The conference, held from 28th to 30th July at UN headquarters in New York, was convened under the mandate of General Assembly resolution adopted on 3rd December 2024. Chaired jointly by the Ministers for Foreign Affairs of France and Saudi Arabia, the gathering resumed this month after a suspension in June, prompted by escalating tensions in the Middle East. Its agenda centers on advancing the implementation of long-standing UN resolutions related to the Palestinian question and the two-state framework. The urgency of the Maldives appeal was underscored by the deteriorating conditions on the ground. Israeli military operations in Gaza has intensified in recent weeks, with the Health Ministry reporting that the occupational forces have killed at least 60,138 Palestinians and injured more than 146,000 since the offensive began. The region is also contending with a growing hunger crisis compounded by infrastructure collapse and ongoing blockades. Since taking office, President Dr. Mohamed Moise has intensified the Maldives' diplomatic and legislative efforts in support of Palestine, marking a significant shift in the island nation's position on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. This stance has led to a high-profile policy change, a legal amendment prohibiting entry to individuals holding Israeli passports. The Ministry of Finance and Planning instructs all government officers and institutions to present the projected baseline budget for the next 3 years by 28 August. The Finance Act mandates the Ministry of Finance and Planning is required to prepare the annual budget of the state and submit it to the Parliament 2 months before the start of the next fiscal year. The circulars signed by the Minister of Finance and Planning, Musa Zamir, have instructed all state institutions to submit the baseline budget for 2026 to 2028, the budget for the new policy initiatives along with the projected budget for local councils. The ministry has issued 3 separate circulars for the preparation and submission of the budget. The ministry said the new policy initiatives included in the 2026 to 2028 baseline budget must be implemented during this period. The circular states that the budget for this section shall include the economic, social, or other benefits of these projects along with new measures to increase state revenue. In addition to estimated budgets for new projects, agencies are also required to submit baseline budgets consisting of anticipated expenditures for existing projects and activities to continue at the current level or scope. Details of salaries and operating expenses of the agencies should be sent as additional information. The ministry has also invited local councils to prepare and submit mid-term budgets in accordance with the regulation on determining grants to councils, budget preparation and implementation. Budget details to be submitted by councils, state block grants, conditional grants from government agencies, council trust fund, additional revenue for councils. According to the ministry's circular, local councils are required to share their medium-term budget details with the ministry before 18th September. Under the budget timeline set by the ministry, the state budget will be submitted to the cabinet between 19th to 23rd October for approval before being presented to Parliament on 30th October. The State Trading Organization STO reports a net profit of $10.57 million for the second quarter of 2025. The result, though solid, marks a 3% decline from the previous quarter as the company faces a mounting pressure in its core oil business. Gross profit for the quarter totaled $37.23 million, reflecting a 2% decrease from the first quarter. Total revenue fell more sharply, dropping 12% to $233.44 million. According to the company, the decline was driven by fluctuating oil prices and a noticeable reduction in oil demand during the period. Revenue generated from other business segments, however, showed improvement. STO reported gains across its operations in pharmaceuticals, construction materials, and food and beverages products, offsetting some of the losses incurred in the energy division. Operating profit came in at $15.31 million, down 11% from the preceding quarter. The decrease was attributed to the contraction in gross profit and a proportional rise in operating expenses, highlighting the financial strain imposed by shifting market dynamics. Investment income and reduced finance costs provided a measure of relief, with STO citing increased returns from investments and a lower net finance cost as key contributors to a profit before tax of $12.84 million. After tax deductions, a net profit for the quarter stood at $10.57 million. Compared to the same period last year, the company's performance showed a notable improvement. Second quarter net profit rose by $972,762.65 year over year, representing a 10% increase and underscoring the resilience of its diversified portfolio. STO is widely regarded as the country's most diversified commercial enterprise, with operations spanning key sectors of the Maldivian economy, including oil, pharmaceuticals, construction materials, and food and beverage. STO continues to play a central role in national commerce. Brazilian international law specialist Evandro Carvalho says Trump's trade policies on Brazil will force countries to diversify their trading partners. Evandro Carvalho, a professor at the Getulio Vargas Foundation and international law specialist, said that Trump's tariffs on Brazil will create great insecurity for Brazilian companies and sectors engaged in commerce with the United States. U.S. President Donald Trump slapped a 50% tariff on most Brazilian goods to fight what he has called a witch hunt against a former president, Jair Bolsonaro, but softened the blow by excluding sectors such as aircraft, energy, and orange juice. That came as a relief for many in Brazil, who, since Trump announced the tariff, has been urging protections for major exporters caught in the crossfire. In a fact sheet about Trump's executive order on 30th July, the White House tied the tariffs to Brazil's prosecution of Bolsonaro, who is standing trial on charges of plotting a coup to overturn his 2022 electoral loss. According to an estimate by former Brazilian Trade Secretary Wilber Barrel, the list of Brazilian products exported to the U.S. comprises approximately 3,000 items, and only a fraction of these received exclusions. Microsoft's Azure cloud computing business delivers another quarter of blockbuster growth, powering a revenue above Wall Street's expectations and showcasing the growing returns on its massive artificial intelligence bets. Shares of the software company rose 8% in extended trading after it said Azure sales surpassed $75 billion on an annual basis, the first time it has disclosed that figure, beating expectations for $74.62 billion. Microsoft's results come after Google said it would spend more on data centers to meet demand for AI services, and Meta projected higher sales with only modest increases in spending. The trio results could help resolve investor questions about whether big tech is benefiting from its massive data center build-out, with capital spending to reach $330 billion this year. Microsoft and Meta's results helped fuel a $500 billion gain in AI stocks. Microsoft's cloud business still trials market leader Amazon Web Services, which had a head start in cloud computing and brought in $107.56 billion in its most recent fiscal year. But investors said Microsoft's new revenue figure indicates its investments are translating to increased sales. Liberal Senator Bernie Sanders urges U.S. Congress to end military aid to Israel. U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders says that American taxpayer dollars have been used to starve children, bomb schools, kill civilians, and support the cruelty of Netanyahu and his criminal ministers. He quoted a Brown University Research Council that calculated that the United States has paid for 70% of the Gaza war.
There is no military purpose in starving thousands and thousands of children. Let us be clear. This is not an effort to win a war. This is an effort to destroy a people.
The Gaza Health Ministry reported 7 more hunger-related deaths on 30th July, including a 2-year-old girl with an existing health condition. The Hamas-run government media office in Gaza said the Israeli military killed at least 50 people within 3 hours on 30th July as they tried to get food from UN aid trucks coming into the northern Gaza Strip. The health ministry further added that since October 7th, Israel's genocide in the Gaza Strip has killed more than 60,000 people and laid waste to much of the territory. Prime Minister Mark Carney says that Canada intends to recognize a Palestinian state at the United Nations in September. He says his goal was to preserve the possibility of a two-state solution. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney told reporters that a planned move was predicted on the Palestinian Authority's commitment to reforms, including commitments to fundamentally reform its governance and to hold general elections in 2026.
The reasons I cited earlier, Canada intends to recognize the State of Palestine at the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly in September 2025. This intention is predicated on the Palestinian Authority's commitment to much-needed reforms, including commitments by the Palestinian Authority's President Abbas to fundamentally reform its governance, to hold general elections in 2026.
Canada had long stated it would only recognize a Palestinian state at the conclusion of peace talks with Israel. However, Mark Carney also highlighted that the reality on the ground, including starvation of citizens in Gaza, meant the prospect of a Palestinian state is literally receding before our eyes. Court of Arbitration for Sport CAS confirms that a closed-door hearing in the case of Crystal Palace versus UEFA, Nottingham Forest and Olympic Lyonnais will be held on August 8th. Crystal Palace were demoted to the third-tier Conference League by UEFA's club financial control body in a multi-club ownership case, while Olympique Lyonnais will be allowed to play in the Europa League. The Eagle Football Group are majority owners of Lyon, while its chairman, John Textor, also owns a controlling stake in Palace. Textor later resigned from Lyon's board of directors, with Michelle Kang appointed chairwoman and president. The London club appealed the decision, with CAS now confirming it will hear the case next month. Nottingham Forest, who finished 7th in the Premier League, will replace Palace in the Europa League if their appeal fails. Palace had qualified for the Europa League by winning the FA Cup last season, while Lyon reached the competition by finishing 6th in League One. However, the French club were allowed to keep their place as they finished higher in their respective league. No ruling is expected on the day, but a decision is anticipated on August 11th. Against the backdrop of Sydney's sandstone cliffs, artist Michael Brandon meticulously replicates the heart-rending shadows and colors of the iconic coastal landscape onto his canvas, capturing the scene in real time. Michael Brandon's decades-long passion for painting in the open air, known as open air, highlights a commitment to an increasing rare artistic form amid modern fast-paced lifestyles. Braden, a student of fine art specializing in plein air painting, describes his medium as a personal choice, emphasizing artistic freedom.
I think coming outdoors to paint is how you capture the real essence of a place. Someone the other day made a comment, so why don't you take a photo and, like most artists, and take it back to the water. I said, look, that's not plein air painting. It's not getting a true representation of what you want to do. If you take a photo, all the perspective's a bit wrong in the photo. The photo makes its own colours.
Transitioning from sign writing and mural work to fine art over 25 years ago, Braden saw no artistic inspirations left in his work when the trade became computerized and decided to paint fine art full-time. At the beginning of his plein air journey, he spent time immersed in Southern California's Laguna Beach plein air studio, a region renowned for its long tradition of painting outdoors. Popularized in the 19th century, plein air painting was made possible with the innovation of portable paint tubes. Typically, artists stretched the scene outdoors and painted back in the studio by mixing pigment powder with linseed oil. But these portable paints, artists could take their work outdoors and paint directly from nature. French Impressionist artists including Claude Monet and Pierre-Auguste Renoir embraced the style between 1960s and 1900s, as did influential Australian landscape artist Arthur Streeton, with their works capturing fleeting light and emotions in real time, influencing modern art movements. Braden's art has drawn admiration from local residents and art enthusiasts, highlighting the challenges and rewards of creating art outdoors in natural settings. His work continues to inspire connections between art and the environment, shared his philosophy on artistic growth and mentorship. And that's all we have for this hour. Thank you for watching. Wish you all a very pleasant time ahead.